We're going to talk about Mojo. Last night I did a breakdown of Mojo, and I think I made a strong appeal to Marvel to hire your boy, to bring your boy into the fold, so that I can help them bring Mojo into the modern world. I don't know how it landed. I'm imagining that it didn't. Nobody sees this stuff, but we're going to talk about Mojo. Mojo is an X-Men villain who's kind of been on the decline for the last couple of years. And I think it's kind of a mistake because he is probably more relevant now than he has ever been. All right. So I'm going to put him up on the Summer Jam screen. You're about to see what he looks like. I need a large image of Mojo so you can see. And you're going to see the Trump analogy. I made the Trump analogy last week. I'm not going to beat it to death, but the idea is Mojo is he comes from a world where media and messaging controls all aspects of how people interact with one another. And the more viewers you have, the more people are paying attention to you, the more power you can amass. Okay. And so I'm gonna throw him up on the board here. So we're talking about Mojo. So Mojo represents a character in Marvel that was kind of born during the 80s, and he was supposed to be a send up of cable television and how we consumed media. That's really what he represented. And as a result, I think people with the decline of cable television, Marvel's kind of figured, oh, he's not as important now. He's as important as he ever was. Here's Mojo. Of course, he's sitting on top of the X-Men. He is a recurring X-Men baddie. Mojo is a media tyrant. He rules the Mojoverse. He's from a race called the Spineless One, so he has to use a mechanical chair in order to get around. First appeared in Long Shot. Number 3 Long Shot was a limited series, and he was created by Ann Nocenti and Art Adams, and if I'm not mistaken, they were married. We're going to drop Long Shot number 1 on here because I do have that cover. Okay. So this was Long Shot number 1. Mojo debuted in Long Shot number 3. Long Shot was basically a built protagonist. The core identity of Mojo is he's a parasitic system. Power comes from viewership and engagement. The more people that are watching his stuff, the more people that are viewing his content or watching the shows that he produces, that gives him more power. And power allows him to warp the reality of the Mojoverse. Okay. And so he warps it through his power and then some super advanced technology. And then I think there's magic that's tied to it too. Okay. Mojo's powers, like I said, include reality manipulation, narrative control, but he's physically weak without these systems to support him. One of the idea is he made his debut and he's supposed to be a TV executive. He's supposed to be a send-up of television executives. And Longshot was the manufactured protagonist who had powers of luck manipulation, probability manipulation. And so things always kind of seemed to turn out his way. He was given those powers because Mojo constantly put him in deadly situations. Let's jump forward a little bit. The X-Men kind of became targets of Mojo's fascination. So he was always kidnapping the X-Men, dragging him in the Mojo world and putting him in super dangerous circumstances so that his audience will watch and consume them and give him more power. And so he abduct the X-Men all the time. And then the satire was he did a spinoff of the X-Men called the X-Babies. And the X-Babies were kind of Mojo's version of stand-in. So he didn't always have to kidnap the X-Men and have to get foiled on international, worldwide Mojoverse television all the time. Okay. I guess I'm going to have to pull up a picture of the X-Babies too, right? So that we can see what we're talking about. Okay. But X-Babies were considered kind of, and it was a satire, right? It was a spinoff of the X-Men that Mojo created for his audience to watch. And he would put them in peril. I don't know if this is the first iteration of it, but they've done the X-Babies things lots and lots and lots and lots of times. I mean, this has been an ongoing theme in X-Men and Mojo comics. Like, it's been persistent. And like I said, that's the satire piece. That's the fun piece of Mojo. And I think what happens is when we talk about him as an X-Men villain, that's the piece that people kind of focus on. So X-Babies, little versions of the X-Men. that he can put them into dangerous situations. And I think one time it was he de-aged the X-Men. He de-aged them and made them younger. Now, the modern era of Mojo, because you guys gotta understand, back in the 80s, 90s, Claremont era, when Mojo was presented as actual existential threat to the X-Men. He was always there. He was kind of like, the way I would say is he's kind of like the X-Men's version of Mr. Mixoplidic, Superman's magic genie that comes and torments him, pops in and makes his life a living hell, and they have to figure out how to make him say his name backwards to send him back. That's kind of what Mojo represented. Okay. And so in the modern era, in the Krakoa era, they show him kind of as legacy media and decentralized platforms. And I think the thing that would have, the way that Marvel can make Mojo relevant is, think about how the attention economy works right now. If Mojo came up with a social media app that people on Earth used and people in the Mojoverse used, he could probably become omnipotent. Like, he can have all the power, because if they did that, he would have unlimited power, if you will. And so I think Marvel's dropping a ball by not utilizing, Mojo comes up with his own version of TikTok, or comes up with his own version of YouTube, where it's constantly people in peril and viewers watching him live stream very horrific things. I think that you could absolutely make Mojo a persistent threat to the X-Men once again, maybe even worth a crossover. God knows they need new crossover villains, because we cannot do another rehash of Age of Apocalypse, y'all. Y'all did it with Sins of Sinister. You're doing it with Age of Revelation. Let's go back to the drawing board and do something else here. I think Marvel, if you're interested, I will outline that entire story for you if you're interested. But I do think we could establish Mojo as an X-Men villain by utilizing social media. Because think of it like this: a person on social media, like, you can absolutely go viral on YouTube and have 300 million views, and people on Facebook won't have any idea who you are. That's a very powerful thing. Since social media is super decentralized, it can be on any device, any phone. So everybody who has an internet connection can be subject to providing Mojo power. The themes could be attention as currency, suffering as accomplices. I really think that could be a compelling story that Marvel could be utilizing Mojo for. So let's ask the question: is Mojo evil or just a mirror of audience behavior? And who holds more power in these dynamics? Is it the person that's creating the dangerous content, or is it the person that isn't? Okay. And is the villain Mojo in X-Men, is he a system? Is he an actual villain, or is he just the system with a face? Okay.